Keionte, the pick six against Ohio State, beyond it being a game-changing play within the realm of that game, what did it say about you as a prospect?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the preparation during the week. I feel like that play's made on Tuesday. All week we're seeing that play, seeing the tips and reminders. During the game, before the game. That play's made during the week. So seeing that play come out, I feel like that becomes muscle memory based on the practice and the time put in throughout the week.
Skills and ability matter, but like you just said, those plays are made early on in the week. How has your time in college helped you with that preparation and also just natural IQ as well?
Yeah, I think seeing the game for years slows it down for you. So I feel like at times the game can slow down just based on seeing the formations multiple times and knowing and understanding what offensive coordinators and quarterbacks are trying to do in situations.
Keionte.
You also deal with not to say you're an underdog, but you had that underdog kind of in your heart.
Still underdog.
Yeah. And then we saw that this year, right, with Miami, you guys kind of fighting and pushing through to make it to the national championship game. How did you embody that, and the rest of the guys like Ruben and others? How did they also embody that as well, and propel you guys?
Yeah, I think you look at it like not getting the respect, and then it always makes you want to work harder. And I feel like our team and our head coach embodied that, and I feel like that was something that we loved to be in that situation, always having something to prove. So that was something that we thrived in.
Having something to prove. You're here. This is what it's all about, right? Proving something to 32 teams.
Yeah.
It's the biggest interview of your life. Are you going to work out in the field drills? And if so, what are you looking to prove to these teams to make yourself, for maybe a future top one?
Yeah, so I won't work out this week at the combine, but I will do everything at Pro Day. So that's something I'm looking forward to being able to show teams at March 23rd in Miami, Florida, that Keionte's that guy that they're looking for.
You were only in Miami for a year, but you quickly became a fan favorite, and I think we both can agree it was one of the best decisions of your life.
100%.
What made that Miami move happen, and what made that move so special to you?
Definitely would say relationships. I feel like Coach Cristobal recruited me in JUCO, and we had a great relationship. Coach Will Harris recruited me in JUCO, and we had a great relationship. Coach Etheridge, recruited me, and I committed to him at Auburn. So I just say relationships. Feel like being a good guy at times can pay off in the long run, and it did. So that transition, coming from Auburn and then Houston and then getting to Miami, it just felt super comfortable based off not even have to get on the visit, and you don't even have to tell the head coach your name. He already knows you. So it was just something. It was a comfortable thing. But I would definitely speak on the relationships. Just trying to become a better person and just build those relationships as times go on, because you never know when they'll pay off at the end.
Keionte, have you met with the JUCO route? Is the road less traveled for everybody? How did that really affect you? Just putting your head down, to quote the great people in Miami, lacing your boots and getting to work?
Yeah, I think it turned me into a dog, man. You go there and it's a constant battle. You're battling with your teammates, but you're battling with other people. And one thing people don't know is when you start to pick up offers, it turns you into a bigger target at times. You got offensive tackles running way out of their formation, and where they're not supposed to be to come get film on you. It's just how it is. You'll go on Twitter and you'll see film strictly on top recruit in JUCO. Just basically film of you. So it's definitely something that required me to be. I had to be on my tips and had to be on my feet and on my P's and Q's at all times, because you never know who's coming around, and everybody's trying to give you their best game.
Keionte, have you met?
How do you think you'll remember this Miami Hurricanes defense in 10 years?
Yeah, I think the standard is set, man. I think playing fast, playing physical is something that live on. I'm very grateful that the young guys got an opportunity to see that. You see them coming in, even the freshmen that came in, them getting a chance to see that playoff run and see the preparation throughout the week, and then seeing and hearing the conversations in the locker room and seeing how we executed and how we played on the field.
Yeah, speaking of physicality, what DBs did you grow up watching or admiring? Whose physicality do you admire today?
Yeah, when you look at it, growing up in college, in Auburn, we played in the same style of defense. Jalen Petrie played at Baylor, so that's someone I watched tremendously. Before every game. I love his game and how he goes about his work. And then you got to speak on the Jalen Ramseys and how he plays the game physical and in the way you don't see corners naturally playing, but the way he steps out of his way to be a physical player.
You're speaking about the younger Miami Hurricanes. Who are those next guys up for Miami?
Yeah, I mean, you can speak on a lot of those guys there. You know, you got Zachariah Porter, he's key for, prime senior year coming up here. So very excited for him. You got the young buck Bryce Fitzgerald, going into his second year, getting all that experience of, coming with us. And then you got new guys they brought in, the recruits and the freshmen. It's just going to be, that standard of that room is going to stay the same, with Coach Harris and Coach T. Joe in that room. They're preaching the same thing. So I'm excited for them guys there. Yeah, to be honest with you, how the slot thing came about, I was the number one corner coming out. I got to Auburn and there was, two corners there, Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James. So I just asked Coach Etheridge, I was like, man, I want to play football. Where can I get on the field at? And he was like, man, the star position is, somewhere I can see fitting in. So, I jumped right in and I fell in love with it and I've been playing it since. So that's a funny story on how that all started. Oh yeah, I felt like they had great questions. They obviously wanted to know what's going on in 24, and then just to see about how much ball I knew and stuff like that.
What makes a good star?
Oh, I think just being versatile. I mean, when you look at the position, it's very a unique position. At times you got to be a defensive end, got to be a linebacker, got to be a safety, got to be a corner. So I think it's just the ability to be a Swiss Army knife and be able to do multiple and also thrive at it. I feel like it's a key to defenses at times, and I feel like it needs to be evaluated that way. You said what? I met with a lot of teams formerly. Very grateful for the teams that I've met with. 100%.
Have you met with Tampa Bay this week?
You said what?
Have you met with Tampa Bay this week?
I have not.
Keionte, Akeem talked a little bit about being an older draft prospect and how he actually thought that was an asset for him. Do you feel similarly, and how might you respond to a team that might be concerned about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that, that going around, but I feel like, this game that we play now, it's a win-now game. And I feel like that takes a lot of the age things away. Some of these teams, they don't have, some of these coaches don't have time to wait. So, I feel like you evaluate players as they can play the game of football. Because, when you play this game, it doesn't matter how old you are. Got to give a shout out to my guy, Malachi Tony. You see a 17-year-old come in and change a whole program. So I don't think age is, something that, teams should be worried about. I know it's obviously contract-wise, but, when win-now situation, you get the best guys.
Have you met with the Dolphins, and would you appreciate if they found a way to keep you in Miami?
100%. A lot of love for Miami, so that would be something that would be cool.
Can you expand on the...
I saw a picture of Coach Scott recruiting you when he was at Oregon.
Yeah.
Can you just talk me through that recruiting story and how crazy it is that he got to coach you?
Yeah, a funny story again, man. I actually was going to Oregon. I didn't want to make that decision on that trip, but someone just told me to hold on to it, and I'm glad I did. So I kept it in my pocket. But I was going to Oregon, coming out, and then I was at another visit at another school, and I look at my phone, and it's Cristobal to Miami, and obviously Cristobal called at Miami, but it was just like, come on, coach, like you just departed, and so it was something fun. But to come back and have that college, and have that relationship with him, that was the first thing he brought up. Like, I've been trying to get you since you were at Snow College, so it was just super fun.
Can you expand on that versatility thing? Do you think the slot position in the NFL has evolved? It used to be kind of the third, smaller, quicker corner. And now, sometimes that guy needs to be a linebacker. Sometimes he needs to be that kind of corner.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, like I said before, I feel like it's a key to defenses. At times, being able to, keep your nickel on the field and stay in too high safety, being able to disguise more as a defense is something that you got to key into. And then, being able to do that when teams get into 12 and 13 personnel, you got to have a guy that can, still be able to fit the run and do different things, get off blocks and set the edge and certain things like that. So that's a key defender to have on the team, and I feel like, it should be evaluated that way.
Are they rarer than people think? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's a unicorn position, and at times, you got to have a guy that, can do multiple, depending on what the defense is trying to do. So it's something that, is super exciting. I feel like, on tape I've shown, I can be multiple and be versatile. So it's something that, I'm super excited about.
Have you met with the New York Jets?
I have not.
Keionte, have you met with the New York Giants? If not, what would it be like to play for Brian Branch?
Yeah, Brian Branch is a guy I've watched a lot too on tape. Definitely a guy that's very versatile, plays the game the right way. So that would be a meaningful, to be able to get out there and be with him.
You talked about at Snow College kind of having a target. Did anything like really wild happen? You're talking about linemen coming chasing you down. Did you have any experience like that?
Yeah, no. To be honest with you, man, I just like guys knowing like the offers I had. They're like, calling them out, like So it's just funny, like, oh, we want that Oregon offer, like everybody on the team, like targeting me, like in a way. So it's just funny, especially especially being a corner. You know, when you go to that other side, and you're on their sideline, it's just like, man, you can't even focus. It's just guys are just chirping all day. So it was something I enjoyed. You know,
So
it was fun.
you were hearing a ton of trash talk.
Yeah, trash talk all the time, man. When you go to the opposing sideline.
What was that process like for you? You know, obviously you had a long career in college, and it is such a change in the scene with NIL and transfer portal. You kind of were at the start of it, now so I'm basically wondering what it was like for you from JUCO to Miami, facing that adversity, and also taking advantage of the new system in place.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I just built a model on how to handle adversity. That's why you see a guy that can have a bad year in 24 and then bounce back. I feel like I built that from the moment I didn't have any offers coming out of high school, not recruited based on something I, you know, put myself through, not handling my schoolwork, and having that chance to like understand that, you know, I have to be able to do everything I have to do and put my best foot forward in order for everything else to happen. So, you know, building that model and creating that just handled me and taught me how to handle adversity. I mean, when you get in adversity situations, you know, there's only two things you can do. You can either stop or keep going, and I feel like I've learned how to just keep going no matter what the situation was, and it got me here.
What do you think? Have you talked to the Bears yet? And what do you think of their secondary last season, leading the NFL in interceptions?
Yeah, I have spoke to the Bears. You know, they do a lot of creative things on defense, and you know, they do different things and put guys in positions to take the ball away. So that's something you know, I pride myself on being able to do. So it was definitely interesting to get down and sit with the meeting and get tested by the coach there and see how they go about things.
What did they ask you about?
Just mostly just seeing what defensive schemes I knew and understood, and then they test me on some things that they do and seeing if I could comprehend it.
What was it like? What was it like playing with Jacoby Thomas?
Oh man, that's my guy, man. I mean, we're actually roommates up here, so that's something that's cool. So you know, just man, a guy that can run and hit, and a guy that's gonna turn you up, and a guy that's a true leader. You know, a guy that puts himself behind and always puts the team first. So I'm excited to see where he goes and ends up, and hopefully we can go against each other and just get the relationship. That's just a 1 year relationship, and that just speaks on the type of people we are. The bond we were able to create and the standard we have and the culture at Miami.